Chapter 16. The following week began dark and grim as a severe rainstorm hit the San Bernardino Valley. A thick fog covered Clearcreek and brought a misty chill. The small community felt isolated, dismal, and gloomy. The unnatural lighting in the hallways seemed dimmer and held an empty glow. Rebecca's window wavered against the pounding rain. "Not a pleasant afternoon, is it?" John asked. "No." She was wrapped in a sweater and paced the room. Occasionally, she glanced toward the window only to give it a disdainful look and circle away from it. Meanwhile, the water's constant beating dominated the room. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I don't like the rain." He slipped into a chair at the table. "Why's that?" "I just don't like it." She headed toward him. "Tell me why." "Why are you asking me this?" Her hands clutched together as she slid into the other chair. "Do you think I'm being childish?" "No. You're sharing your feelings. That's good." He opened his notebook and glanced through his summary of their last session and his considerations for this one. "Why can't it snow?" She heaved both elbows onto the table. "I like to watch snow." "It's in the forecast." He gave her a quick smile. "You'll have your snowfall soon enough." The beating intensified. She glanced toward the outside noise, then pulled herself into a hug. "Were you ever scared of rain?" He turned his notebook to an empty page, then glanced behind him at the downpour. "Probably when I was young." "But you're not now?" He watched the splatters against the glass, the wind sending the rain into a diagonal descent. "What happened?" she asked. "How did you change?" He turned back to look at her, searching for something useful to her vital question. "Well, if I was afraid, my mother would have made me face that. She would have pushed me until I wasn't frightened. Maybe that's my problem. When I was young, I tried to hide from anything I was afraid of." "And what were you afraid of?" "Everything." "Everything." John picked up his pen and gave her a small grin. "How about we start with an example?" "My father never pushed me. He just had someone take care of it. Usually it was Nanny." "So," John restated, "your father never placed you in a situation that you viewed as scary or threatening?" "No." "I see." He jotted down this information. "But that's not his fault." She glanced at the wedding picture near her. He looked at it too. "What was your father like?" "My father—" The beats against the window intensified. Rebecca looked back at the window and hugged herself again. "Dr. Sanders, I don't know what to tell you." "Tell me what you remember." "I don't know." She turned back to looking at the picture. Then her eyes scanned over her books. "I didn't see him much." "Why?" "He liked to travel." "For work?" "I don't think so, but I don't know. Nanny said it was because he missed my mother too much." "Is that what you think?" "When I read his journal," her eyes rested on the dark green leather-bound book, "he said it was because I reminded him too much of Mother. He didn't want to be around me." "Tell me about your mother." She looked back at the framed picture and released herself from the hug. "There isn't anything to tell." "What do you remember about her?" "Nothing. She died when I was 2, and my father wouldn't talk about her. All I have are pictures." John pointed at the wedding photo. "Can I see?" She handed it to him. Her father was tall, darker in complexion. Her mother, shorter and fair-skinned, with compelling eyes like Rebecca's. "You look like her." Rebecca reached for the Skyview High School yearbook. "Let me show you another picture. In this one, Nanny said I look exactly like her." Rebecca's facial features, the arch of cheeks, the soft lips, also were captured in her mother's senior photo. "I think she's beautiful," Rebecca said. "She is." For a moment, Rebecca continued to flip through the old pages. "Tell me more about your father," John said. She sighed heavily and closed the book. "What do you want to know?" That's his journal? John pointed to the book. Yes. How does it help you understand your father? She looked down at her hands, her face dropping an expression as if he discovered something she didn't want him to discover yet. I don't know, she said softly. Not ready to lose his momentum, John tried again. Well, from your own memories, what was he like? He was always sad. She looked at John, revealing her own sorrow. Why was that? I don't know. Her voice held a tinge of frustration. Everyone said he was lonely. But once, Nanny said it was because he felt ashamed. Ashamed? He left my mother a lot. Nanny says he should have done better and stayed at home. He was far away in a different country. When she had me in, it was a hard delivery. They had to cut her open to get me out. If the doctor had done a better job fixing her up, she wouldn't have kept getting sick. Did your father blame you? I don't know. I think he was sad she got sick and mad at the doctor for what happened. Then when she died, he was unhappy that he had to raise me without her. I guess I made him sad. I don't know. But if I wasn't born, Mother wouldn't have gotten sick. You were 15 when he died? 2 months away from my 16th birthday. And you don't remember him? Not really. Sometimes. Some things. But as time passes, it's harder to hold on. There are things I forget. She looked back at the journal, her fingers suddenly tapping against the table. I still miss him, though. Thunder erupted. Rebecca jumped from her chair. With wide eyes, she looked back at John. Oh. Her voice was unstable. It's okay. Everything's okay. I'm okay. She grabbed Cinderella from the bookshelf and sat down. Let's read stories. What did your father do when he was with you? Let's read stories, Rebecca repeated. She shoved the book into his hand. The opportunity was gone. The wind howled in John's ear. The chilling cold cut into his face. His words were quick. Barry, any footprints? Blood? I don't see anything, Barry said. Nothing in the snow? John asked. Nothing. Another gust of wind whipped across their faces. John barely heard Barry speak. If she went into the woods, we'll never find her. As predicted, the rain had turned to snow, and once it started, it refused to stop. Snow had cascaded downward during the early morning, but by noon, the fierce wind was hurling the flakes toward the colorless ground. The highway patrol had closed the major roads. No traffic was allowed up or down the mountain. Clearcreek's long access road was covered. Dr. Landerson had announced numerous times that this was the worst blizzard he'd seen in his 25 years on the mountain. Dr. Gravers thought otherwise, but had admitted to it being a beast of a storm. Due to the dangerous road conditions, the night crew would not arrive, and the day staff was required to stay overnight. Then, in addition to the terrible weather, the electricity went out. To deal with the power failure, the staff had separated it into different wings. Patients were ushered into the common rooms, where staff governed the use of lanterns and flashlights. Some of the patients had been frantic, angered by the disruption. Accommodations were made, and by around 8 p.m., the chaos had dissipated. Patients and staff were prepared to make it through the night, until they discovered Clarissa was missing. The alarming situation quickly grew worse. Apparently, Clarissa had found a knife on the 4th floor, in the women's bathroom. She'd written a message across the aluminum mirror in blood. I will kill Jolene. Jolene, Clarissa's archenemy, was terrified. A ripple of excitement and fear spread through the residence. Selected staff had gone to hunt for Clarissa, with Barry and John venturing out into the cold, dark grounds. Icy particles cut across John's cheek, and his nose suffered in the bitter conditions. They hurried around the premises. John's lungs burned from the freezing air. Thick clouds covered the moon and stars. The night was black. Barry held the flashlight. We have to find her. His teeth chattered in the cold. What do we do if we don't? When Barry paused to wipe his nose, John requested the flashlight and shined the bright ray toward the trees, casting shadows into the dim forest. No one knew when she had escaped. The snow continued falling and strong winds kept blowing while John still searched for footprints. There was no indication of anyone passing through. Nevertheless, the two men ventured forward into the black forest. Clearcreek had been designed to keep its residents secluded, isolated, and sheltered. Secure gates protected the entrance. All other openings led into the desolate woodland that covered the backside of the mountain. An attempt to flee would be a challenge in decent weather, but in the midst of a storm, such an attempt would be inconceivable. Barry, a few yards behind, needed light. John flashed the bright ray behind him and tried to get control of his breathing. His heart pounded. His lungs burned. How could I have let this happen? Barry leaned his weight against John and took in a few short breaths. What if she's hurt herself? I'm to blame. Barry, it's nobody's fault. It's been a horrible evening. He scanned the options of where to head next. Don't worry. He tried to sound calm. We'll find her. But John did worry. If she'd fled the building into these vast dark surroundings, John didn't know where to continue searching. He let out again. The two men descended through the trees, plowing through the snow. Further into the obscure forest, Barry stopped again to gasp for air. But it's my fault. It's not, John said again. When the electricity went out, in order for staff to enter, I unlocked the security door. You did what you needed to do. John kept moving. He held tight to a tree and swung his body over a small ravine. It was difficult to proceed through the blinding snow. Barry continued talking. I'd turned my back on the door. The wind made a loud whistle through the trees. My wife called. She's pregnant and she's very emotional. John's foot sank deeper into the snow. Another untouched area. She hadn't come this way. He turned the light around and headed back up the incline. Barry followed. My wife's afraid of this weather. She's concerned for my safety. He stumbled against the powdery hill, and John reached his hand out to assist. She doesn't want to be at home alone tonight, and I was reassuring her everything was fine. It must have been at that... He started to cough. After the coughing fit passed, he continued. I think it was then that Clarissa snuck out. She was so quiet, nobody noticed her. In an effort to keep the blood circulating, John clenched and unclenched his stiff fingers. He swung the light toward the thick grove of trees and squinted through the pouring snow. Nothing but darkness. John took a step, only to pause. Barry halted behind him. What is it? Are you cold right now? I'm freezing. Why? Aren't you? Of course I am, and she would be too. Why didn't we think of this before? What? I don't care how much Clarissa wants to get out of here. She isn't stupid. She's not going to wander around in this weather. So where is she? I'm guessing she's found shelter somewhere. The cold either sent her back into the building or... Isn't there a shed on the southeast corner of the grounds? It's a storage shed for the gardening tools. But it's locked. Well, we should wait, Barry said. Maybe it's not locked. It was supposed to be. But the lock kept getting jammed last September. I bet that's where she is. Together, the two men rushed up the slanted hill, expending great effort to plow through the deep snow. The exertion caused John's cheeks to burn, and his heavy coat briefly felt like a burden. When they reached the shed, John pushed the unlocked door open. Before the flashlight could illuminate the dark shed, he heard the whimpering. Clarissa was huddled in a corner, shaking and moaning. Her bloody wrist was exposed, her other hand clenched around a pocket knife. John peeled open the icy fingers, took the knife out of her hands, and closed the semi-dull blade. Many small cuts crisscrossed her sticky arms. John covered her with his coat, then lifted her limp body. No, get your hands off me. She made a weak attempt to fight. Clarissa, we need to help you. You can't. It's why we're here. Let's get you inside. I want out of here. She tried to push both of them away, but in her condition, it was a short struggle. Let's go, John said as the two men locked their arms around Clarissa and dragged her forward through the storm. I'll be destroyed, she called out to the wind. I can't go back. Don't make me go back. You're sick right now, John said softly. I can't bear that hell. She kept talking against the wind. I am a prisoner. I should have never come here. I'll never make it home. This is where you can get the help you need, Barry said as if speaking to a child. Liar. Her voice grew stronger, her body struggling slightly again. It's good, Barry tried again. This is where you should be. Trust me. Can't you see? She screamed into wind. Am I the only one? This is where you'll get well again, Barry said, clearly out of breath as they headed up the entrance's front stairs. You don't know. But I know. I know bad. I know this place. She turned her face upwards into the falling snow. Get me out of here. They entered the building where two nurses immediately headed toward Clarissa, who continued to fight against them as they escorted her down the hall. Barry and John stood in the hospital's entryway, and for a few moments, neither one spoke. Then John pulled out the pocket knife. Here, you might want to hold on to this. Thank you, Dr. Sanders, Barry said. If it wasn't for you, she'll be all right. I'm responsible for this. It could have been bad, real bad. We could have been looking clear into tomorrow. The point is that we found her. Yes, he repeated the words as if to himself. Yes, we found her, and it's very good we did.